right, so we're recording. This is the special Halloween spooky episode of the podcast that we don't have a name for yet. And I'm your host, Boneflower. Hello. This is your host, AEOLI HERE.
Hello.
He says hello too. He does not have peanut butter in his mouth this time. And so we were talking before this thing started.
About how Australia is a hellhole.
Australia is like the tip of the iceberg of hell, except it's actually on fire. So it's a little bit of hell poking out from beneath the earth. And the reason of this is eucalyptus trees. And also koala bears, because, they're basically literal sex demons.
Right. They're like the head crabs, except
they're like
more
head
dangerous.
Crabs. Yeah, except, they're head crabs, you know what they're after. Koala bears, you think, oh, I'll just hug you. And it's like, bitch, I'll fuck your face and give you herpes. You have herpes, bitch? I got everything. That's koalas.
You can see it when you look in their eyes.
Yeah, little beady eyes. They have no souls. They eat eucalyptus leaves all day, so they're like, like, what other animal just sustains itself on poison? Just eats, sleeps, poops, breathes poison all day. And then, what is that if not some kind of goblin?
Can I reiterate the eucalyptus trees story really quick for spook factor, and then we can do the fire tornadoes apparently?
Oh yeah, let me tell the story about the eucalyptus trees then. So the legend is that Australia, when the Aborigines or the first Australians made it to that godforsaken island, there were dragons that came out onto the beach and ate them almost immediately. And the only way that these people could live without nightly dragon murders is to burn the surrounding habitat, because they would stab at the guy and he'd slither rack into the forest, because back then it was a lush tropical forest. And they could never get those guys. So what they did was they burnt the whole island. They just set fire after fire after fire and drove these dragons out. And they set so many fires that they forgot why they were setting those fires. Everybody just like, I'm going to set a bushfire before I take a nap. And then when settlers found the Aborigines, they'd forgotten how to make fire, but they kept that legend. And out of this constant forest fire inferno apocalypse came the hell trees, the eucalyptus trees. Now the eucalyptus trees, the leaves are poison. The poisonous oils are extremely flammable, and they also aerosolize into the air. So the trees become just fuel air bombs coming out of the ground. And in adding to this, they constantly shed all of this bark that's just prime tinder. It's dry, it's ready to go, and they just pile it up around themselves right on the ground. It's like they're asking for a forest fire. And in fact they are.
They are, yeah.
Right. The reason they're doing this is that eucalyptus trees can live and survive through a forest fire because they have so much fucking tinder on them that they burn it all in 5 minutes and then the fire's gone from their area. But that same fire is ready to spread through the rest of the area. So as the only trees left alive after an inferno hellscape, they are best positioned to regrow after a forest fire and then drop another tinder load on the ground and do it again. So
some Californians were like, hey, this sounds like a great thing to bring to our backyard because this is like a metaphor for us.
Right, like 100 years ago or something, back when the area was getting developed, some guy was like, you know what, eucalyptus trees, they've got so many uses. They've got hemp, you've got pulp,
I get it.
You've got leaves, you've got oils, you've got all sorts of money you can make out of these trees. You guys should come in and take some. And everybody planted a whole bunch of eucalyptus trees, which, became an invasive species and outperformed some people. But then the guy was like, joke's on you, it's going to take like 100 years for these fuckers to grow. And now the chickens are coming home to roost.
All right, so it's undeniable that hell trees actually are pretty cool, like in concept.
It's metal as fuck.
But I wouldn't want them in my backyard. But I get, right? Like, if you're in California, anything that says hemp, you're like ideologically in favor.
Yeah, like somebody's like, well, I plant that in my backyard for $40. And they did. Yeah.
And now they don't have Komodo dragons yet, but I'm sure they'll have those escape from containment anytime. But they have fire tornadoes already.
Yeah, the crazy thing is, like, California is proof that the Bible was real and was talking about something for sure. Because you've got a modern day Sodom where people are shitting on the streets and injecting themselves with needles and doing all this crazy stuff. And you're.
Amputating fingers and toes from the sores that
Yeah.
they're getting from these. She said her boyfriend in that video, that gal who was shooting up, she said, "Yeah, my boyfriend got it too. He doesn't shoot up. He just smokes, but he puts his, I don't know, pipe or whatever you smoke pot in down on things, and it's the surfaces that we're touching
Yeah.
that you get these sores from. It's
So
like,
you're
holy
just-
shit!
The whole
You just can't
town is
touch
covered
anything.
in murder bacteria. Anybody that's outside, that sleeps the night outside, ends up with the sickness.
It's probably the shit dust getting in the air, honestly. Like from the flesh-eating bacteria.
Right.
It's probably that shit. It's just it's not aerosolizing. It's the other one. It's turning to dust.
Mm-hmm. But so, so California has all of these issues coming out. They're pumping out all of the water to grow almond trees for money, and basically there's a rash of desertification out there. It's becoming a desert because they're sucking all the water out and getting rid of all the actual forests. So it's dry, it's thirsty, it's got eucalyptus hell trees coming to roost. And what do they have? We've got inferno tornadoes now. Let me see if I can find a thing for it.
It occurs. You remember when we talked about Final Fantasy VII that one time about how like making these Mako reactors in all these little small towns and driving out the industry there was kind of like a neoliberal capitalism and like cultural McDonald's like commoditization, basically.
Mm-hmm.
It's like they go somewhere, they suck the soul out of the town, then they sell it back to them as creature comforts, was the thesis of the whole thing. And at the same time, like, if you talk about droughts, and so water can usually stand in for culture, if you're talking metaphors.
Kind of.
So it strikes me, they're doing the same thing metaphorically in California that they're doing to everybody else abstractly, right?
Culturally.
California is the central of grabbing everybody else's culture and then selling it back to them as like Taylor Swift, right? You take the country singing girl from, we'll say, small town Tennessee or something, take her to Hollywood, you turn her into whatever she is now, and then you give it back to everybody. You make a mint on it.
Mm-hmm.
But they're doing the same thing metaphorically to themselves by draining all of their water.
Yeah.
And using it to make these very expensive things they can sell to anybody.
Yeah.
But they're also losing their capacity to just exist in that area.
Mm-hmm.
It's becoming a cultural desert, both literally and figuratively.
Which is kind of sad, but also a consequence of anime being real. It's not always a good thing, but it's definitely happening.
Did you find your thing?
I found actual fire tornadoes in California. I don't know if I'll find pictures of them for the meme folder, and I'll insert them in on this section in time. But that is definitely a thing that exists in the world.
So how does that happen?
Trees.
How does that happen exactly? Like what causes
fire tornadoes?
Yeah.
A lot of fire.
Oh, so it's from the forest fires.
Yeah. You have a whole shit ton of wildfires, and the wind picks up, and suddenly you got a fire tornado there from all the heat and the air and the blowing around, I assume.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's a pressure differential thing.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have enough heat, because it's like when you're firebombing Dresden or something, right?
Yeah.
Like you do. You're a melon man. You want to firebomb Dresden.
Yeah.
Yeah. What you do is you drop the firebombs, and then the fire gets so hot that it can't rise fast enough, and it causes that. It's like, you know how water goes down the drain in your bathtub, right?
Yeah, the vortex.
Yeah, it has to do that to escape faster.
That's metal. That's horrifying. That's spooky. And this is
pretty
the
spooky.
Halloween podcast.
That's and it ties into the Bailet myth. Oh, that would be a good one to talk about on a spooky podcast. But we have to get to Bane posting, the other Bane posting. And
we've got layers
we
here.
could do the ziggurat.
Ziggurat?
We could do that one.
We could do that one. I think the ziggurat is actually even longer than the BANEPOST one. I don't know if we'll have time for too many of these, but I would be totally down for reading that one as well. If that's the one. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Well, we better at least get to the Bane posting one quick, because that's going to take like 3 hours to read.
Okay. So it is story time. If I feel like doing editing, I might put spooky music on as a backing track. No promises, except I announced it, so maybe that increases the probability. But so this is a story about a spooky ghost from Bane, who is who is Bane?
He was a classic Vox Populi commenter. We're talking way back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
This was OG crowd back before I was ever there.
In the glory days.
Yeah, the glory days. He was like a super alpha, super melon head type of guy. So he was. Imagine Texas Arcane if he was like a pure melon head alpha man, who's also like he's so smart that he's kind of riding the edge of schizophrenic.
Mm-hmm.
But same sort of character. So he was quite woke.
He was He was a larger than life kind of individual, you're saying.
Yeah, and Koenig used him as an example of how the great psychic energy of the melonheads tends to attract unwanted attention from supernatural predators and just things in general. Like they do where they show up, weird things tend to happen.
Yeah.
Or maybe they're attracted to where the weird things are. Who knows?
Who knows, who started it, who ended it, but we do know that it gets fucking spooky around these people sometimes. So this is the story of Bane. On Thursday, November 4th, 2004, he wrote a blog post about a story that happened way before that. Just to get you going.
Yeah, sometime back in the late 80s or something.
Chapter 1. Every story has a beginning. It is, by default, where you begin to read. Some people start reading at the end. Some writers start writing in the middle. I don't actually know quite where to start, so I'm just going to spin the Rolodex of my life and poke my finger in. One thing is for sure, it won't be the end, because it hasn't. Maybe somewhere in the middle. Haunted houses. I've lived in a few. I've come to believe that there may be something about me that brings out the weird in a place. I may tell you more about some of the doozies later, but I was going through my old military photos yesterday, and a weird one came up from the depths of my memory. One I was more of an observer of than a participant in. I joined the Army, a little over 2 decades ago. I was 27 years old, my life had just blown up in my face, and I joined the infantry because I wanted to. The recruiter had slammed a large book of computer printouts down on his desk. He told me that my ASVAB scores were the highest they'd ever seen in the tri-state recruiting area of Oklahoma, Texas, and Kansas. That the big book was a list of all the jobs the Army had, and then I qualified to go into any one of them. Did I want to become a doctor? A pilot? I pointed to the Special Forces guy in a poster on the wall, the guy with the camo and the guns, and I said, I want that. Oh, no, I didn't, was the general text of the conversation. I didn't want to be a grunt. I had too much potential. I finally told him that I could get all of that other fancy training in the real world, but I could only get this stuff in the Army. I told him that this was Friday morning, my divorce had just come final, she wanted money, and I wanted to get away. And if I wasn't on a bus or a plane somewhere by Monday morning, I was going to go get my old job back and forget the whole thing. That was also the last time that I can recall smarting off to an E7 with a CIB, a combat infantry badge, and both shoulder patches. A unit patch on your right shoulder and not just on the left, coupled with a CIB, means you were sent somewhere by Uncle Sam, somewhere people were shooting at each other. Everything turned into a whirlwind as he ran me ahead of everybody in every line and got me physicaled, poked, prodded, coughed with turned head, clouds of paperwork, raised my right hand and repeat after me, orders printed, bus ticket in hand, an airport plane ticket, and be ready to leave early Monday morning, private. It was just that simple. Nothing left but to party like a wild beast all weekend and fuck all the girls I'd been meaning to get around to fucking. Late one day morning, my parents pried me away from some vixen in a leopard print body stocking and drove my besotted ass to the bus station. I was off to Fort Knox, Kentucky. It was the first part of November, the part where winter is just beginning to curl up his lip and show his fine, sharp points of teeth. Cold, white teeth. I joined the military on a whim, practically press-ganged myself. I had just seen the movie Stripes with a friend, and we both decided to join that very night. Yes, we were drunk. He pussed out, I didn't. I wanted to kill ragheads. Iran was holding our people hostage, and I was royally pissed off. I was tired of punching out every Arab person I ran into, and was ready to go raise some villages. Throw in the aforementioned divorce, add not being allowed by law to see my kids, a few other goodies, and you had, well, me. I hooked up at the Oklahoma City airport with another baby private who had signed up for the same special unit as I had. We had each received a $5,000 signing bonus, 4 years of college, and other incentives. The airline folks knew well how to transform our government food chits into alcohol, and we both kept the hangover of doom at bay while we flew our circuitous route to the anus of Ymir that is Kentucky in winter. A bunch of us rowdy drunks, now all part of the same family, were herded onto buses at some crap-hole airport in Kentucky. We were now bonded together for 4 years. In the end, only about 20 of the 200 would re-enlist. Only 150 made it through training. Every one of us had to have at least 2 years of college. Most of us were white. All of us were astounded when we pulled up to the reception area at Fort Knox. It was the same place that we had seen in the most popular movie in the country that month, Stripes. Literally. We were in a scene in the movie. The internet did not exist publicly as yet, so I had no idea that the entire movie had been filmed there. As the DIs yelled us off the bus and into the building, I began to worry that I had fundamentally broken my brain in some deep, serious way. I was so relieved when Sergeant Holka did not make an appearance. The real thing was much scarier, and he did not twitch a bit. We were told we were being given amnesty, and that if we would just pass behind this curtain and dump any weapons, drugs, sharp implements into the amnesty box, told that all would be forgiven, that we could move on and have a chance to become real soldiers. They cowed us like rain-soaked poodles, and we formed a line and passed, one by one, through the partitioned area, past the box. I shit-canned a $20 pair of damn good mustache scissors through that slot. Clink! I began to notice that I was hearing big clunks and thuds from the box after I passed through. I saw the eyes of the NCOs widen with every clatter and thunk. What the fuck, I could hear them thinking? Grenades? Pistols? I would have dearly loved to have seen the contents of that box after. I won't bore you with the details of our processing, our billeting, our first few frenetic weeks. Go see Full Metal Jacket and Stripes if you want to see that. Stuff ice cubes down your pants while you watch. Have someone beat on you with a stick, and do push-ups on a sheet of dry ice in your underwear, while the only other items of clothing you are allowed are boots and gloves, so you don't stick to the ground like your tongue sticks to dry ice, and you'll get an idea. I was in heaven. I loved nearly every minute of my military service, but after those first few weeks in those wooden barracks, the ones just like you see in Stripes, for the scenes were filmed in those very barracks, it seems like, well, that we woke something up, and something that did not have our best interests at heart. No, not our best interests at all. Chapter 2. Whenever I start to write on this, the hairs on my arms bristle from goosebumps. Just a flash, as all of my body hairs give a bit of a shiver, and then the keys take me nearly 25 years into the past, into that cold November winter where I heard the dead speak. The first couple of weeks were frantic, all the more so because the powers that be had not gotten us our furniture in time, and when it arrived, we had to assemble it all, while maintaining military discipline, under the watchful eyes of tough men who hated us. We were still sick from our shots and performing a killer schedule of PT, physical training, read, torture. And now we got to assemble our lockers and our bunks too. There were so many of us in my platoon that we filled one barracks and the top floor of its neighbor. The overflows were put on the second floor because heat, if there is any of it, supposedly rises. The barracks. Those barracks. As I've said, if you've seen stripes, you've seen those barracks. Essentially, 2-story wooden longhouses with a stairwell just to the right of an entrance at one end and nothing but a fire escape on the other end. God help us if any of us ever broke the seal on that fire escape door. Facing you as you entered the main door were the bathrooms with their disturbing lack of stalls. Welcome to Oz, gentlemen. You get to watch each other's shit. Through the bathroom was the laundry room where we washed the mud and the blood from our duds. The long main area to the left of you as you came in was open until we broke it up into sleeping areas with our bunks and wall lockers. A DI caught one of our guys smoking inside his wall locker upstairs one time. The DI snapped closed the poor bastard's lock, pushed the locker to the top of the stairs, and then over the top. Oh, I bet that fellow learned his lesson. Those stairs. As you went down those stairs, you faced a large rectangular area where as time went on, units would paint their unit insignia, hang a flag or a banner, or paint a rousingly militant mural. Both of my platoon's areas have been painted over white with thick military-grade white paint. The first few weeks went as swimmingly as things can go when your mind and body are being bent and broken, and you are being hammered into a completely different human being than you had imagined in your most feverish imaginings. We had the best mess hall in the U.S. Army, too. There was a plaque. It must be true. Thanksgiving dinner was the best I've ever had. And then there was wine, and enough loneliness to make grown men cry. And we did. Oh, yes, we did. I stood fire guard routinely. We all did. Once, sometimes twice a night if you were unlucky, or your squad leader had it in for you. A sleepy bastard who had just had it would wake you up, hand you the flashlight, and you would slide out of the rack onto your boots. Yes, you slept in your uniform if you were smart. And patrol your barracks, inside and out, and then go repeat the process in the other barracks until your time was up and you could pass on the flashlight and pass back out. This was also the time you could sneak in some letter writing, sneak a smoke outside, and do your laundry. The nights were bitter cold, and leafless trees jittered dead black fingers against the blackboard sky. The moon, poor weak thing, shone at random intervals as if clouds fled from something in the dark. The walk across to the other barracks, once just boring tedium, began to take on a feel of something more. Dread? Yes, that was it. I began to feel as if I was approaching a place where I wasn't invited. We had all of us noticed a weirdness over the last several days, like a tattered black lace shawl being pulled up over the bony knees of a watchful-eyed, mean old crone. We would leave our warm, toasty barracks and walk inside the other place, into a wall of cold. We'd check the thermostats, listen at the pipes. Sounds the same as where we just left. In this other barracks, the downstairs had been left completely empty. We used it for close quarters PT whenever the weather went to shit outside. The streetlights shone in from the windows that wrapped the lengths of both floors. Tonight, there was something new. Tonight, there was something bad. Tonight, I heard someone crying upstairs, crying out as if they were about to die. Chapter 3. In retrospect, I believe it had been feeding on us since we arrived, gaining strength, power. As an acutely observant person, I had been noticing seemingly unrelated oddnesses for a couple of weeks, but I had yet to form a picture of the whole. To say that I was a bit distracted defines the concept of understatement. Basic training grabs you by the face and screams straight into your brain with spittle-flecked lips and bulging eyes. A week or so earlier, as I was at the top of those stairs in the second barracks, wondering at the cold, the edge of my flashlight beam caught something odd on the facing wall in front of me, the large flat part, just before it turned into the stairwell ceiling. I put the flashlight beam directly on it, and I noticed pencil markings. Not fresh ones, mind you, but old ones, bleeding through. I thought it odd, but I was ready to be out of there, and unasked the building in a hurry. I had resolved to go back the next day and look at it in daylight, but it was a few days later, and another stint at fire guard before I got back up those stairs. Someone was muttering in their sleep. "No, Sergeant. Please don't make me, Sergeant." Spoken low, through a throat taut with tension. I figured basic training was a real bitch for him, and moved to check the fire escape down the long row of cots. As I was initialing the check sheet hanging by the door to prove I'd been there, I heard another sleeper behind me, to the right, cry out softly. "No, Sergeant. Please don't make me, Sergeant." Same voice, different private. I turned to leave, and I felt someone behind me, reaching for me, and I whipped around and there was nothing. I shrugged under my field jacket and decided I really didn't want to be there anymore. I still had to go initial the sheet at the downstairs fire exit. At the top of the stairs, the quavering light of my flashlight shone on the wall in front of me again. Now I can clearly make out the outline of a leaping tiger. Enraged, his fangs bared, claws extended, he wanted nothing more than to tear my throat out. Though startled, I was intrigued. I steadied my light and looked closer. The tiger was bleeding through the plaster but was still unfinished. There were parts that were still clearly waiting to come through. One eye glared, the other was milky white. Some of the claws weren't finished. This was a work of art, done by someone with real, raw, natural talent. And how was it bleeding through a 1/4 inch of army paint? Behind me, I heard a sleeper say, "No, Sergeant. Please don't make me, Sergeant." And I just knew, suddenly, in my heart of hearts, that someone was directly behind me, sizing me up for a nice push down the stairs. I bolted. I may have touched a step or two on the way down, but I could not swear to that in a court of law. What I could swear to was that as my new military training told me I'd better get my ass over to that check sheet on the downstairs back door, my instincts were screaming at me to run and not look back. I shook it off. I wasn't a damn baby, I told myself. I was a badass, getting badder, and no bullshit heebie-jeebies were going to keep me from my appointed duties. I walked the length of the building, down a wood floor that had been polished like a mirror by hard-working hands, lit to a gleaming silver by streetlights outside, and there was a darkness at the end of the room that my flashlight couldn't seem to overcome. Something was piping in horror from outside, into me, into my own personal public address system. I'd met darkness before, and I didn't appreciate it fucking with me like this. I kept going. The sheet for the week was blank. No one had initialed it for the last 4 days, and something, was right there beside me. When Carey talks about things burned into his memory, I know he is full of shit. My story is from the early 80s. I can remember some events from those weeks like I have a Polaroid in front of me, or as if I am watching a movie. The other bits are just a jumble, and I'm hardly sure where they fit into the whole dark montage. By now, I was a squad leader, and could very proudly wear my little gold chevron on my uniform shirt pocket. It meant very little in the way of power, but one thing it did buy me was an all-access pass to our NCOs, and I had begun to feel like it was maybe time for some reinforcements. After I ran like a little bitch from a clipboard with no signatures, I went and talked to the other squad leaders. As you might imagine from my description of the unit, they were some pretty squared-away guys. They had been officers in ROTC and were gung-ho to the max. Now they stood in front of me like scared little boys. It was early the next morning, still dark, maybe 2 or 3 a.m., and I'm pretty sure it was a Saturday. I had woken the other 3 squad leaders, and we went down to the laundry room to talk. I had not woken the next fire guard. I wanted to talk to these guys alone. I told them what I'd been noticing. Things I'd seen, things I'd felt, and their faces were a mix of grim and scared spitless. Each of them told a jumbled story of their own, and our stories all parallel. They hadn't noticed the drawing, thinking it was one of the other guys from over there who had been doodling it. They told tales of burned-out light bulbs, dryers that wouldn't run, toilets that belched up black nastiness, stuck doors. And the guys that lived in there were at sick call all the time for this or that ailment and seemed, well, somehow drained. I told the squad leaders that I thought they should suit up and that we needed to go over there. My best buddy Tim, the toughest man physically I had ever known, shook his head and said, "No way, man. No fucking way." You didn't tease a guy like him, even if you were friends, and I didn't have a humorous body in my bone right then. Humorous bone in my body right then. The other two reluctantly shuffled off to get dressed, and I waited for them by our main door. Tim came out of the laundry room too, and stood at the first window, peering out. "It's really fucking dark up there, man," he whispered to me. I looked, and it was as if someone had hung blackout curtains over the upstairs windows. If I hadn't seen the glow of the street lights on the other side of the building through the downstairs windows, I would have thought they had burned out. The other two came stumbling back down our stairs, and we reluctantly shuffled on over, the single flashlight, poor comfort, as we walked. We got to the main entrance, and the screen door was stuck. With effort, we yanked it open. The main door didn't want to open either, but it too gave, after a struggle. We got inside, to the base of the stairwell. I heard someone crying upstairs, crying out as if they were about to die. "No, Sergeant. Please don't make me, Sergeant." Louder now, as if whoever wasn't afraid of waking up anybody up there at all. Then, from another part of the room came the same voice again, crying out loudly, "No, Sergeant. Please don't make me, Sergeant." We looked at each other, and one of the squad leaders shook his head and backed up to the door to stand in the pool of light from outside. Two of us left. I put my foot on the first step and started up, and I heard him follow. Even now, I do not exactly know how I made it up those stairs. We got to the upstairs landing, and on impulse I turned my flashlight to the picture of the tiger to show the other squad leader, and I had to stifle a scream. It fairly leapt from the wall, dark, bold strokes, eyes burning for our throats. A perfect three-dimensional drawing that followed you with its eyes. It seems like something's work here was nearly finished. Chapter 4. Here begins the jumbled part. Things got disorganized and bumpy, like a film shot by running through the woods. I remember rushing into the sleeping area, and the first person my flashlight found was a 6'7" black private that would one day see firing an M60 machine gun one-handed while running forward. Now he was on the back of a jumble of blankets and his sleeping bag, whimpering, comatose, tears streaming down into his ears. We looked around, and in that fell light that seemed to come from the fog, something was pouring out of their noses and mouths, straight up for a couple of feet above their faces, and then darkening and coalescing up in the rafters. I bolted for the light switch panel and flipped them all. There were several pops as bulbs blew, but enough wan light flickered into life that we were able to see well enough to run from cot to cot, rousing them as best we could. It seems as if we were running in a dream. Our buddies began to stir and choke and then cough, and some were starting to sit up with dazed looks on their slack faces, and I remember being back in my own barracks, winded as if I just ran 5 miles. And there was a senior drill, E7, angry god of my life, looking like someone had just rousted him out of bed, wondering who he was going to kill first, and yet he had something more to his anger. Whatever that was permeating the air, our minds nibbling at the edges of our souls, he felt it too, and it didn't sit well on that reddened Scots visage. His eyes and the brim of his campaign hat flipped up past me, over my shoulder, and I turned to see every man from across the way be straggling one by one through our main door, clutching armloads of blankets and gear, and looking for all the world like the GIs you see in photos from World War II as they retreated from Bastogne. Nay. Our platoon sergeant stalked up to my big black man and asked, in a quiet tone, loaded with potential doom and destruction, exactly what in the blue Virgin Mary motherfucking fuck did these privates think they were going on about? "We sleeping in here tonight, Sergeant First Class," was the answer he got, and that is when I stepped in and pulled my teensy-winksy rank and asked the mad Scotsman if he would please go into the office and speak with me. His eyes cut across me like lightsabers, and he saw something in my face that said, "Hey, Sarge, we are men here, and you have been straight with me, and you know me well enough to know that I'm not some young, dumb, full-of-cum dipshit like you're used to dealing with. What do you say you let me save your ass and ours as best I can on this one?" He jerked his chin towards his office down at the far end, and we hustled down there while the overflow guys, with suspicious lack of comment from the guys of my building, settled down in exhausted slumber on blankets and air mattresses on the floor next to the other guys' bunks. I left the other squad leaders to finish squaring things away as best they could in the middle of a nightmare, and I went in to talk with God. I'm surprised at how badly I want to put this little story down, back in its rusted box with the other ugly things, and flip the key down a convenient sewer grate. I thank you, dear reader, for helping me carry this baggage for a few blocks. So, there in the NCO room, alone with my E7, the first promise of dawn graying the windows a bit, and I told him the tale that you have read, here, in a slightly more military manner, of course, but the tale spoke for itself. His ruddy face grayed with the dawn a little bit at each new revelation, until finally he bade me to stop with a gesture of his hand, and he began to speak. His eyes focused off somewhere in his own private nightmare, and from it he spoke. 3 cycles before you guys got here, I was an assistant DI, and I worked with a platoon in that building across the way. His big Adam's apple worked as he swallowed some bitter emotion. There was a young private that just didn't belong in the army. I do not have a fucking clue how he got in. He was like Private Blank, and he named a private we lost because he was such an unbelievable wimp that he couldn't get a live grenade over the wall, and nearly killed several of us. This private drew the most amazing picture of a tiger on the wall over there, said it almost dreamily, quizzically. He went on. The senior drill, Sergeant First Class, really had it in for him. Went after him hard. It was winter, just like this, and the kid was up on top of the Reaper, at the very top, and he froze. He just couldn't get over, and everyone else had run on ahead to the next obstacles. The Reaper is essentially just a giant ladder made of logs, 2 or 3 stories high, the logs worn mostly smooth from the passage of many boots. When you're at the top, it feels like you can see the ocean from there, and breeze and movement make it sway. Now, Senior Drill was down there at the bottom yelling, no, mostly screaming, and there was Private Wimp up there, hanging on like a fucking baby monkey and crying his eyes out. He was crying out, and he paused for a beat here. He was crying out, no, Sergeant, please don't make me, Sergeant. But the Senior Drill just got madder and madder until he was actually pushing on the logs, kicking them even, to make them shake even more than there were. The kid kept hollering, no, Sergeant, please don't make me, Sergeant. And then he actually put one leg up and over, and I thought he would. And he fell. He just fucking fell. My heart felt like a wooden block. Why in the world was he telling me this? Was he drunk? He bounced off a log once on the way down, and then splatted like a fucking watermelon. Died fucking instantly, the medic said. He looked at me. I was still just an E6 then. Like that was somehow supposed to mean something to me. They busted the E7 out on my testimony, he said, and then, you will not speak of this to the men. You will not speak of this to anyone, or I will bust you out like you cannot imagine. I nodded my head. I couldn't have spoken if ordered. He snapped his wrist out and looked at his watch. In 30 minutes, form the men by squads for chow. Other than chow, you are all confined to this barracks until further notice, and no one is to approach that other barracks without my explicit order. Understood? Yes, Sergeant First Class. Like you could have gotten me over there now at gunpoint. And then the machinery of government clicked into high gear like I have never seen before or since. The assistant DIs showed up, mostly staying in the office with our E7. During chow, they all 3 walked over to the other barracks and went in. They didn't stay long. I saw them leave because my squad was fresh back from chow. Everybody had crashed back into their racks to take advantage of the lull in training. Usually, on Saturday, we'd be doing PT, running, studying in groups, practicing rifle drill, polishing the floors and toilets and windows, and sleeping on the floor so as not to mess up our bunks for inspection after tiresome inspection. Today, as the squad leaders straggled back from breakfast with their charges, there was an air that we were being forcibly kept next to an unexploded bomb. Of course, I told the other squad leaders everything he told me, and watched their faces blanch and turn. I swore them to secrecy as well. This shit could cause a mutiny, especially among the black guys, who are already rolling their eyes like cattle in a thunderstorm. There were white guys doing it too. But providentially, everybody was curiously innervated, numb. And there was a pressure in the ears, like just before a thunderstorm. There began much running to and fro of the higher-ups. About 2 or 3 in the afternoon, our eyes goggled to the sight of a major entering our barracks. Someone screamed the building to attention, and he stalked among us, and then went into the NCO office with the sergeants. The highest rank I had seen so far in my short career was a captain, and then only a few times. The major left and came back with a lieutenant colonel. Then a full bird colonel appeared. We were pretty much in shock by now, wanting nothing more than to sink into the floor. The spookery next door nearly faded in the face of all this brass. Nearly faded. Night was coming. The shadows were extending their bony fingers, sliding stealthily towards our building, maybe to try to claw their way in. The other officers left, and a jeep pulled up with yet another colonel. His driver was a captain, and both of their collars had crosses opposite of their insignia of rank. This is the first and last time in my career that I saw any chaplain with a rank higher than major. The chaplain spent a while talking with the sergeants, and then my E7 came and got me himself, and took me into the office to retell everything you have read above. As the colonel listened, he worked. The captain put a black case on the desk, and the colonel began to take off his outer uniform and replace it with another one. They were the vestments of a Catholic priest. The captain began to put on similar vestments as well, though not as gaudy and purple and tasseled as the ones the colonel was draped in. Purple stoles, weird bibs, all the trappings of an exorcist. I was particularly impressed with an assortment of silver tools, tools of the churchman. I had seen these items in Hammer films, but never in person. Devices that sprinkled water, things that were to emit smoke and be swung from a chain. It was like watching a warrior snap on armor and prepare weapons for battle. Their faces were grim and resigned, and somehow peaceful. They'd been in this place before. Oh, not this geographical point on a map, but they had battled before, come out alive, and were ready to go in again. They left through the fire door just past the NCO office, and made their way across, and entered through the downstairs fire door of the other barracks. I stood at the window and watched with the other NCOs, and nobody said a word. Again with the jumbly bits. Time dilates, perception dims and pulses. Awareness cannot be trusted. Madness pushes its snarling face through the curtain, the oh-so-thin curtain that separates the real from the scream. I saw an invisible hand push every locker and bunk across the way upstairs to the left in one motion. Heard it too, like slamming open a big silverware drawer. Crump! A second later, it all slammed back to where it had been. Crump! The guys would later tell me that the stuff in their lockers up there was as if the lockers had been picked up and shaken like a child would look for a prize in a box of Cracker Jacks. Maybe it was just from the move. For you see, the next morning, early, we were put on buses and taken far out into the field, where we worked on our woodland skills for several days. We were also assembled out in these woods and counseled that, under the penalty of the Uniform Code of Military Justice, we would be prosecuted under the fullest extent of the law if we ever breathed a word of this to anyone, including ourselves, on a deserted desert island, talking in our sleep. When we were finally brought back, it was to new barracks where our stuff had been magically moved to in our absence. Military life had resumed, and we were given a rare 10 days of leave to go home for Christmas in the middle of basic training. We came back and finished becoming soldiers. Sometime in January, on a midnight run about 12 o'clock on a Saturday morning to get beer and cigarettes, I redirected my 4-man team of squad leaders. We were near what they called the Triple Nickel, the parade grounds where you saw Bill Murray and his ill-kempt crew in stripes doing the hippie rifle drill nonsense. I knew we were close to our old barracks, and I suggested we all go back to look at our old haunting grounds. The other squad leaders looked at me like I was crazy, and we ran on towards the beer and into our future. Posted by Bane at 6:26 p.m.
That's a pretty intense story.
It really is, man.
I remember reading that maybe 5 years ago, something like that. Because it smacks of the realism, right?
It's spooky.
If it's not a real story, then the man can write. But I mean, he can write in any case.
The man can write. For sure.
I assume you need a break, so maybe I could monologue for a little bit. But that was a good reading.
Well, I appreciate it.
It's a hell of a story, though.
Very
spooky.
Need a drink. Yeah, it's one of those where you're like, huh, you know what? I've heard enough ghost stories. Like, I've been to a haunted house, and I told the ghost their mixtape sucks, and nothing came of it. So I'm like, if the ghosts are out there, it's weird, because if the ghosts only show up when you're deluding yourself into being spooked all the time, like if you're somebody that jumps at shadows and those people see ghosts, then you can just be, okay, you're paranoid.
Mm-hmm.
And like everybody gets superstitious, and maybe that's there for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
It's the ones where people are trying not to be affected by things, and then they happen anyway, and then stuff happens, and you're just kind of
and
what is going on here?
It's funny because you can get a couple stories like that out of people. If you ask for, you've known them well enough for a while, and they're super serious people. You're like, yeah, but have you ever had anything weird happen? And you'll get a couple weird stories out of pretty much anybody.
Yeah.
They're just like, yeah, this thing happened, and you know what? I don't believe that there's anything supernatural in the world, but that was weird.
But that was weird, man. And it's like, I'm not going to dismiss it out of hand. I don't know if the probability is too high that ghosts exist, but there's always a shot, there's a chance about that. If I ever get super spooked, I'll tell somebody. That'll update me.
Oh, so I guess I should ask, do you have any spooky stories? Anything weird ever happen?
Not really.
I've had a couple, but I'm also a little bit on the edge of crazy, so mine don't have so much sway as like a properly serious person would. I'm not accusing you of being any such thing as a super serious person. I'm
100% serious all the time. That's why people call me Serious Boneflower. Because of how serious I am.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, you sounded very serious when you were reading the stories. I the entire time I was thinking, I believe this guy because he's so serious. This is a serious man.
Yeah. People do say that about me.
He sleeps at attention.
I sleep saluting. Just in case somebody comes by and I have to be like, yes, sir, I'm already there.
So as far as the spook cast, how long have we gone now? Is this recording turned on?
I think it's been an hour. I don't have a specific timestamp thing, but I think that was an hour. I don't think we can do more than one of these stories at a time, but I'm open to doing the next story the next time.
Okay, that would be cool.
I'm almost willing to say you should read it the next time.
I would be down. I was thinking about asking if I should jump in, but that'd be rude. I figured you'd tell me if you want me to help out.
Yeah.
It's a public service though. We actually got this like in audio format because nobody reads anymore. Who's got the freaking time?
Yeah.
Podcast where it's at.
You have a spooky, scary Halloween story, and it's all in one block, so it wouldn't be too hard to just make it its own like clip. It's not too hard to clip out.
Get some of those.
See myself doing it.
Get a disaffected Jordan Peterson fan to clip it out and make it its own thing on the YouTubes.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Jordanetics. Speaking of scary, Jordanetics is coming out. The spooky book by Vox Day about how Jordan Peterson is actually in a straitjacket on the cover of it.
Mm-hmm.
How he's secretly a mental patient. It's a fraudster, man.
I'm kind of curious what's in it, but I don't know if I'm going to get around to reading it. Because you wonder, like, is there anything new in there?
Mm-hmm. I'd be surprised, like...
It would be nice if he did a proper deconstruction of the philosophy stuff, but I just don't know if that's what's going to be in there.
Mm-hmm. I want to say it'd be something along the lines of, the introduction, rhetoric, actually falsifying a couple of points, rhetoric, so that you have your core of, no, read the book, it's definitely, I already dealt with these arguments already. but then you leave it with, oh yeah, this guy's dumb and probably a pedophile or something like that. So the stories add up to the rhetorical points, but the facts add up to a, oh yeah, this was a measured rebuttal of this guy. But you put that in the middle where people don't remember it.
Yeah, that's probably a good prediction.
It's a little specific. I remember one time you predicted something and Koenig predicted something, and then I think he was like technically true, but it was like, come on, man, dang it, I didn't mean it like that.
Do you remember what you're talking about? What prediction it was?
I don't remember too much. It was something about like this thing will happen by this time, and he had something a lot more vague and broad. That's like, this thing will probably show up at some point, and you're like, haha, I won. It's like, no, that happened after the thing, so it didn't count, or something like that. It's a long time ago.
Okay. The important takeaway here is I was 100% right on all counts, right?
Yeah. The thing is, like, if you have a prediction with 5 different things that have to happen, it's easy for one of those things to go wrong and
that's
validate the whole thing. Whereas if you say, the sun also rises. What do you mean by that? Well, the sun rises. Yeah, but when? It's gonna.
See, this is what I meant. I was talking about the Trump election. I predicted it 5 years ago.
Yeah, and then you're like, well, you didn't say the sun is going to come up at 6:59 Eastern Time. You just said the sun's coming up tomorrow, probably. It's a lot easier to be right about that than the other thing. So basically what I'm saying is I haven't read the book, but I have an idea of what it's going to be, basically because I read his advertisement about it. And
he's good at writing ad copy.
Yeah.
I will say that about Vox any day. The man... I won't say that he missed his calling or nothing, but he can sell a book.
Yeah. I'll be impressed if Jordan Peterson's career derails as a result of this book. I'd be surprised if it derails, period, barring some crazy changes.
Well, it's definitely going to fizzle. Because it's not... It can't take off now, right? I mean, they did the marketing test, and they're going to put him on Dr. Phil and then put him in front of a bunch of boomers. They're not going to be impressed because they're like, what the hell is this guy talking about?
Well, what I'm saying is he's already kind of blown up, and once you get that high, you kind of can sustain that business model forever. You've got an existing customer base, you've got a large amount of awareness, you've got sales funnels and everything going in.
Yeah.
It's like...
so Alex Jones, right?
He's like Metallica right now or something.
There you go. I was going to say Alex Jones because even though he got completely deplatformed, the man's still going to make some money.
He's still going to make money. It doesn't matter if his star is no longer trending because the existing momentum he has, he's got a brand.
Yeah, and there are going to be enough loyal people that stick with him that it's going to... He can coast on that. There are enough people going straight to Infowars.com, I assume is the website, daily as a habit.
Because there's a war out there for your mind.
Water filters.
Water filters.
I need to get some
Super male vitality force. Penis enlargement pill man.
Also
That's
need to get
next
some of those.
supplement.
The other tall force.
The other tall force.
Shit. We should have... I suppose if we were going to monetize, we should have gone through Alex Jones.
I would do... It's kind of tough because I like sales, I like the advertisement stuff, but I don't like bullshit. And there's a whole lot of that to wade through. So, like, the best kind of sales... It would be tough
not to do bullshit with Alex Jones.
Yeah.
Let's be honest.
It'd be hard to get out of that, the character thing. But, like, the best sales story I have is a friend of mine was buying a truck, and he wanted a Toyota, and he wanted it in a color that they didn't have, and he wanted it in a manual. And the sales rep was like, yeah, okay, well, they make like 4 manuals a year because everybody drives automatic Toyota trucks. And that orange is actually on another model. It's not offered on this car. But let me call these people and see what I can do. And she called the thing. She called the actual factory, and they said, okay, for about $7,000 extra, we can put that spray paint on it, and we can do a manual, and we'll just put yours on the assembly line. It's going to cost money because we're doing it special, but we can get that for you. And then, how much, and the dude basically said, name your price. What would be an acceptable that would get enough profit for you and would also mean you're not fleecing me and taking me for everything. So she named a price for the truck. He paid that price for the truck. Everybody was happy, right?
Sounds good.
So like that's not selling somebody bullshit. That's somebody that wants something, a very specific thing, and you moving mountains to get the thing that they got, right? Those are things that like I don't want my money. I want this thing. So, skin cream doesn't always do that for people. But if you can get something that actually works, that it's like I have really terrible acne and now I have no more acne, people will pay out the nose for that, and for good reason, There are things to sell that are good for you, that you are solving problems for people.
So what you're saying is we need to sell beef.
Yeah! We need to have a buy a cow program. Comes with its own freezer.
I think that market might be saturated.
There's a thing called Epic Meats, which is basically like meat jerky kind of stuff. They have like meat bars and different things, and it's like 100% beef. It's not like a Jimmy Dean sausage thing. So it's like hipster beef sticks. I could see getting a thing for that and being like, hey guys, if you like beef, hipster beef sticks, use my code.
There you go.
5% off.
So you're saying there might be a market for some sort of like health foods type of weird website where you rep the things that you actually believe in, and then you say, you use my code, you draw some income off that. Like, here, I'll do your research for you because everything else is trying to kill you. Yeah. And I'm only going to give you stuff that I think works, and I'll apologize a year from now when the one thing out of 20 that was mistaken on.
Like, I take ads for Dollar Shave Club because why the fuck not? Like Gillette, they're pretty good razors. If they'll pay me for saying, hey, have razors if you want to shave, I'd do that.
I do want to shave.
I wouldn't do some of the really bad ones from the YouTube community. One of them was BetterHelp, which was like a psychology expert website. I think I've talked about this before. But there was this guy called Philip DeFranco who ran a big channel who was partnering with people. He wouldn't even go to the creators. He would go to their managers or something and get it down so that the creators didn't have to actually look at the product. It's just like, oh, this is a thing we're doing. I guess you cleared it with them.
So what, they would just say in their videos, like, buy, I don't know, sweet tarts.
No. These people were saying, everybody gets sad sometimes. I've struggled with depression myself. Oh. And, I went to BetterHelp, and they helped me and set me up with an expert and really helped with my problems or whatever, right? If you have these problems, here's where you can go. And then you look at the BetterHelp site, and they've purchased like 15,000 testimonials, and they've said, we've had experts contact like 11 million people with this stuff. Somebody did the math, and it's like these 300 psychiatrists would have had to do 5,000 calls a day to get that number correctly. Something's going on here. So it was people using their personal heartfelt stories to be like, go to this BetterHelp website and get cured for your depression. And then you think, well, these are licensed medical professionals, right? Some of them. And then you go, okay, well, at least it's confidential because this talking with your therapist is always a confidential thing. And it turns out in the license agreement, they say, actually, we can record all of your conversations with your intimate details with your things and monetize that and market it however we want. We're going to keep that, listen through it, and sell it. And that was just in there. So people started taking a look at this and started going, hey, man, what the fuck's going on? And it got really big and really, it got some negative press at that point.
Damn.
Yeah. So it's like that's the dark side of it, where you use your
influence,
your brand, your influence to sell horrible shit to people.
Probably by accident sometimes, but it sounds like they were just repping it. Like the content creators would just hear from their manager, hey, we need you to tell a story about this.
Yeah, a couple people were really into it, like the Philip DeFranco guy, and then I think a few people were just, yeah, this is my next sponsored content guy. It sounds like they're doing a good job, so I'll do it. Like, they didn't check into it personally. They had people that were supposed to be doing that.
Yeah, so they just do a live read or something.
Mm-hmm. And so I've seen a couple of those, and that stuff is the kind of shit you want to stay away from. But it's like... yeah,
that's actually real life spooky right there. Kinda.
That's real life spooky right there. Halloween Spookcast.
But yeah.
There's like a thing where like like personal trainers, right? I want to lose 30 pounds and gain some muscle. Okay, you do these 3 motions. I'll walk you through how to do them. It's going to cost. It's going to take a week of time out of my life to even teach you how to do this. We're going to say $50 a session for a week. That's X dollars, right? You're like, okay, that's good. I can do that. If the guy's doing really good, if he has a shtick, and he's advertising himself to you for that, if you're in the market for that, why not, right?
Yeah,
not all sales is horrible, but sales seems to attract the scummiest fucking people sometimes. And so there's it's like lawyers, right? You really want a lawyer around, but the lawyer jokes are not there for no reason.
Yeah. I don't want to like offend nobody, but it's kind of like having guns and soldiers around, right? It's like people who want to kill other people, like, can't always trust them to be the nicest people in the world, but that's not to say that you don't want to have soldiers around. Clearly.
Yeah, sometimes there are failure modes around there, but
unless you're a hippie and you think that everybody's just going to get along by talking.
There are some bad individuals, and generally the system is a good thing to have in place most of the time. Okay. So, yeah. I don't remember where I was going with that after that. Oh, yeah. So you've got,
lawyers,
journalists, top-level scummy people.
Not always the case, but it is now.
Currently. We'll do a current, like, top 10 spooky professions here. We got journalists. What do we got after journalists? Like,
I'd throw politicians in there.
Politicians.
They're about at the same level of just skeevy.
Nonprofits, NGOs, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Got, like, adoption agencies up there. Child services. Divorce court, secret court people. You got women's studies majors just going down the HR.
I'd throw the entire academic profession into that rung right there.
Anybody in publish or perish mode is in the HR tier of scummy professions. Are there anybody else we can offend while we're doing a list? You had
Canadians.
You had cops, soldiers, and military on this list somewhere.
I wouldn't put them in the same stratum as HR thoughts.
So put them at like the 15 to the 20 range, where Canadians are like a 7.
I could do the Fullmetal Alchemist routine where they're dogs of the military and the state just go full libertarian.
Mm-hmm. All taxation is theft. That makes you muggers. The lowest kind of criminal. You know what
it means if you give people tickets for speeding? You want to kill people. You want to murder people for speeding.
You want to kill people for their money.
Yeah.
Because they were driving too fast in the free property area, in public places that we own. You're trying to extort us for our own land. Monsters.
Yep.
Smoke some weed, baby. That's libertarianism. It's being naked, smoking weed, and complaining about people taxing you.
Except now it's just smoking weed because... But they drove out all the non-purists on that topic, and so they all became alt-right and socialists and shit.
They don't even get naked anymore? That's sad.
I assume that they still do, but only if you're a complete, like, tranny degenerate or something.
Consider the plight of the libertarian. Once a freedom-loving individual, now descended to only ma weed and ma tranny dick. Not even real dicks anymore.
It's not like they're hurting anybody. Except
it's not like I want that line, like in the middle of the surgery where they're like sticking a spike in there and nailing out the vagina. They're just hammering in a new vag on somebody. They're like pounding their dick into a crater. Be like, well, it's not like they're hurting anybody. It's their own choice, right?
Yeah. No, they should.
Yeah. It's okay. Just
I want to see the explanation for why it's okay that a tranny dude who was a serial rapist got put in the female prison, raped a bunch of women in there because he has them trapped and he's a man.
Well, you see, it's the non-aggression principle. If you assume their gender, that's aggression against that guy.
Oh, that's a good point. That's hate speech, and hate speech is violence.
Yeah.
So non-aggression principle says we have to take him at his word. First of all, that gender is a social construct.
Right. So if we were assuming that he was lying, that would be aggression against his worldview or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about the aggression. We don't want to give aggression onto people,
So the real crime is if we didn't let him rape those women.
Yeah, so it's his fault that he aggressed on them, and it's not our fault because we didn't aggress on anyone. So
Okay.
really...
So we're blameless in this, actually.
Right. So it's their fault and not our
That's the
fault for
important
us
thing to me.
jacking off and smoking weed while people get raped. That's really everyone else's problem.
That sounds like an ideal world to me.
Libertarianism.
It's like...
Trademark sign.
I mean, admittedly, it kind of bothers me a little bit when I can hear it through the very thin walls of my apartment, like my neighbors getting raped and murdered. But at the same time, like, it's not my business. It's not my business. Like, that's supposed to be, like, what am I going to call them? The organs of the state? They're going to discover my weed and, you know.
Let me see what else. Guns are boring. Football is gay. Your waifu is shit, as well as your mixtape.
My waifu is principled as fuck. You take it back.
Hitler was like a Jewish Jesus woman at the same time.
And a gamma.
And a gamma. Have we covered all the bases here? Is there anybody left? It's just a clump of cells. Ooh.
Well, I have to wait. Oh, man, the abortion one.
Yeah.
I haven't yet gotten any information on midget IQ, so we'll have to wait on that one.
Midgets are retarded.
We don't know that. I haven't seen any studies yet. I did some searching around and I couldn't find it. I just want to see the distribution. All you see on the internet is people saying like, "Well, height correlates with IQ, therefore midgets."
Yeah, it's like, has anybody actually checked the numbers? Are there numbers? I'm curious about this. I'm not. It's sad to be curious about a thing and not just like constantly maneuvering into the next rhetorical viewpoint thing.
Yeah,
Because
I'm
you're
pretty sure that's illegal now because.
Can we take 3 minutes to actually check this? What, are you a pedophile?
No, I'm just really into midgets with low
Nambla did
IQs
nothing
or high
wrong,
IQs, or
motherfuckers.
high IQs.
Nambla did nothing wrong. There we go. I think we've covered all the bases there. I don't believe this, by the way. I'm just pushing buttons now. If
That's
you
right.
respond to this, you have no listening comprehension.
We should do like official positions of the podcast. Hitler
Timestamp it.
Hitler did about 5 things wrong.
Hitler had poor execution.
He was a vegetarian. He was a poor tipper.
Hitler was a fucking vegan. That's what's wrong with him. If he had some upper body strength, maybe he wouldn't have pussed out at the last minute. What a fag.
Oh no. So
Spooky.
yeah, that's
Oh,
we're harvesting the loosh right now for Halloween.
Yeah.
The loosh of all the tears.
I'm pretty sure Islam is like a joke religion founded by the same people that like Magic the Gathering.
I thought that was Catholicism.
Oh. I'd say, okay, that's Catholicism. So what's Islam, man? Oh, it's the goat fucker religion. It's just a big, like, you know how
Oh, we haven't shit on Eastern
unconsciously-
Orthodox.
people just unconsciously advocate for the environments that they want to be in. So the end result of Islam is women in burlap sacks and men fucking goats, and that's, some people are into that, right? Islam is a furry religion.
All right.
Islam is the furry religion. There we go.
Okay, so I thought of Eastern Orthodox. So that's a religion for people who want to dress like pimps and not read the Bible.
Eastern Orthodox is the Wigger religion.
I mean, kind of. It's the Slav religion.
It's the same thing. All right, next.
It's Sunday. I'm gonna change out of my tracksuit and into my
Oh, jeez.
robes that look suspiciously like a tracksuit, except just like a lot of bling.
With more bling on my tracksuit.
Yeah.
Switch out from my shitty gold chains to my excellent gold chains.
Yeah. So, religion for people who would trust Armenians.
If you go to jail, you probably deserved it. The justice system in America is basically 100% accurate, okay? Look, don't go to jail, or otherwise you deserve to be there. I mean, they keep going back after they leave the jail. That's obviously they just do it on purpose.
That's true.
That's what it is.
So smoking weed is principled, but don't go to jail for it because you deserved it. And I don't know. I don't know who else there is to offend.
What was it? I had one more.
The Japanese are too easy.
TV makes you smarter. That's why people who watch Jerry Springer are more successful than you. I read it. I didn't read that in a book because you're not going to find that in a book because you're morons. There we go.
All the intellectual activity is happening on Twitter now. All the smart people are on Twitter.
Reading is unprincipled. Reading comprehension is even worse. The world goes round by incoherent yelling at people you don't even understand. If you're not screaming at somebody that you misunderstood, you're doing it wrong in life.
That's just rhetoric. That's just good rhetoric.
Mm-hmm. That's just optics, man. You just gotta don't worry. Don't do it wrong. Do it right, like me.
So, how do you offend the optics cucks? They're already shameless.
The swastika looks like a butthole.
I didn't need that visual at all.
Did I get too close there?
I don't really like buttholes. It's a general thing.
Yeah, me neither.
Even girl buttholes.
The brown starfish. Okay, so we've done a spooky... this is spooky is because we're going to get mail bombed now. That's why. If anybody finds out our true identities, we're going to get fucked by everybody.
Yeah.
On the Insult the World edition. But this is the spooky, scary Halloween podcast. We're in costume as offensive people when really we're nice guys. Who believe everything that you believe.
And love you very much.
But you're better at it than we are. So don't get threatened or anything.
Yeah, the real hero in this podcast is you, the listener.
The listener. Yes. Thanks, listeners.
You'd be very brave in a spooky ghost story situation where we know. We know because we know you. We know you, personally, intimately. This is getting pretty shitposty.
You know, if you sleep with a gun underneath your pillow, we are that gun. If you sleep with your teeth underneath the pillow because you're waiting for the tooth fairy, we are those teeth.
I like the gun one because we're the rhetoric, right? We're the weapon that you direct against the enemy because. Yeah.
We're just tools, but you are the wielder.
You're the warrior
Master of destiny, the best around, and nothing is going to bring you down.
Very nice.
Crane kick, right into the feels.
It's a stupid kick.
It really is, though. I'm a bird, boink.
It's like, well, how do I attack you? Running forward in a straight line.
You can't defend against the crane kick. If you do it right, enemy no can defend. And it's like, can't you just walk backwards 2 steps and he has to like hop after you or something?
Yeah, I mean, like you come a little bit into range and then you stick your head in there a little bit. And then if he goes for it, you pull your head back and then...
Yeah, the Karate Kid is like a shit movie, basically.
I think I've seen it, but I don't remember anything about it. So clearly it was not impactful. That's not art. Man.
Yeah, it's not art. It's not art. What other things aren't art? Warhammer 40K, not art.
Star Wars.
Star Wars, that's just gone.
You know what's actually really overrated?
That never was good.
You know what's overrated is Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, Lord of the Rings is basically just...
It's garbage. Harry Potter's better.
It's nerds LARPing in the world. Like, when he cast Magic Missile, that was the dumbest thing.
Yeah. When Gandalf cast Magic Missile at Frodo because, I don't know.
Lord of the Rings is like a shitty knockoff of D&D, basically. Remember, we're just in costume. We don't really think these things. This is a joke. It's Halloween jokes, everybody. Spooky.
I feel dirty.
What else we got?
I don't know. I gotta go to the bathroom, so it might be...
let's take a pee break that we can't hear.
Yeah.
Wait a second. If we both gotta go, we can't both go, because then that'd make the stream quiet.
You did read that story, so why don't you go first?
Okay. But you gotta talk about random stuff while I'm gone.
I'll retell that spooky story from the blog.
The spooky story from the blog?
Yeah, the one with the gal in the window in a dream.
Ooh, yeah, that one sounds good. You do that one.
All right.
I'll be right back.
I'll read it proper, except, yeah, to find it first. This is what prep does not look like. Okay. So this one is called Demon Possession Dream, and I was kind of crazy at the time because I was in school, and I always go crazy in school. Like I've never had a semester where I didn't go nuts. And I'm talking like to the point where I had to form the rule that if a hallucination lasts for 3 seconds or longer, I've got to go to sleep immediately because I'm just too freaking stressed out. So the conclusion there is I do not like school one little bit, and I don't know, maybe I'm already a little bit crazy, but school makes it way worse than anything else I can do. I'm usually okay if I'm not in school. I've never been crazy outside of school. All right, so story time. Demon Possession Dream. This is from October 30th, 2015, and it's on the blog. Here are some preliminaries for context. People with more knowledge or experience may know what's relevant. I had recently read Owl's Dream with a demon encounter, so it could have just been my imagination playing with that. Something similar happened a couple days after reading this one, a link to it that no longer exists, where I realized I'd been in one place talking to the same 2 girls for a bit longer than I was comfortable with. What the hell was I talking about? I don't know. That must have been more dream stuff. So I just pulled an all-nighter and then popped a caffeine pill to get a power nap. That's a way of doing that. So this dream would have occurred at the point when the caffeine from that caffeine pill was waking me back up, so I would have to go to school, I was lying in bed in the dream, and I looked over at my computer monitor. I saw a live video feed of the woods out back, and this view began panning toward the house. At some point, I ceased to be looking at the monitor, and the view became my own, so that I was above the ground and drifting from the woods toward the house. There were a couple of toddlers playing outside, and because I sensed that this dream was the psychotic sort, I wondered whether anything horrible would happen to them, because that happens like if you've eaten something bad, like before bed or something.
Spooky.
Yeah. I imagined a possible scenario, but that didn't happen to play out in the dream, which is curious, because usually that like if you think of something that causes it to happen, but I was actually imagining the thing, but it wasn't happening in the dream, that's unusual. You typically aren't able to disconnect the two. So I was imagining in the dream. So anyway, nothing happened. I drifted up toward the upstairs window that looked into my room at the time. In the window, I saw a woman in loose black clothes. She was plain looking and unremarkable, and I didn't get any strong vibes of personality off of her at all. My only impression is that she was a young, unimportant spirit waiting for something. But it scared me that she was in there next to my bed, where my body was. So I raced through the window back into my body. So now I'm lying in bed, still in the dream, but now it's the sort of dream where you think you just woke up in bed. I'm having trouble moving my limbs, and I do get sleep paralysis fairly often, so that's not unusual, but still asleep in this case. I managed to look over to the window to see if the woman is there. I don't see her, but I can still feel her presence very strongly, and that's the only part of the dream where I was very scared. Immediately, she tries to jump into my body, and I see a sort of wavy, translucent projection of her body over mine. So as if they were like superimposed. I can't find any pictures to illustrate this, so I'll just describe it. Her chest was maybe an inch or two above mine, lying down. So it was like her transparent body was mostly inside of mine and trying to push through the remaining couple of inches so that she and I are occupying the same physical space. During this, I hear what I call here a ululating sound that is half her deepish female voice and half static. And I say ululating because it was vibrating as if somebody was saying the word ululate over and over very fast. Like. Now, even in the dream, I realize I'm so completely out of my element that there is nothing left for me but to pray. I don't know anything about spirits or any of this stuff, which is weird because I'm generally not into like conspiracy theory type stuff. So the fact that I'm in Edenism at all is kind of weird. All right, so I don't sense that there's any way for me to push back against the lady with my willpower or anything like that. Whatever weird process this lady is going through feels very mechanical, if a bit alien, and it seems like even if she isn't powerful, It's just a matter of time before she gets in. So I fall back on faith completely, and I pray, Jesus, I know you'll take care of everything because you always do. That's the only part of the dream that had any words in it. I meditate on a vision of the cross and just wait for the cavalry and salvation. Tangent here. I think this is one reason why it's so important Jesus died on the cross. It always seemed like a very weird way to forgive sins. Like, why wouldn't Almighty God go through all this trouble? Why not just say, everybody's forgiven and be done with it? Well, let me tell you that when things get weird, and by weird I mean maybe even demonic possession type weird, it is extremely comforting to know that whatever the bizarre logic was, it is clear that Jesus cares enough to go to all that trouble. If he'll do that, then there's no way he'll give up what he paid for over a relatively small inconvenience like casting out a minor spirit or something. Mm-hmm. So I'm lying in bed, just waiting and meditating on the cross, figuring that whatever actually happens, at least Jesus cares enough about me, and everything else will work itself out. And after about 5 seconds, I feel something change. The intrusion has stopped, and the woman's spirit feels weak. I give a small push, like when you want to wake up from a dream, and she's immediately gone, as if she'd never existed. Sensing this, I wait for a couple of seconds and give another stronger push and wake up. Awake, I actually felt a lot of fear, wondering if it was just a dream or something that really happened. I would imagine that you're supposed to be able to tell, but it felt sort of half real. So I sat in bed for a while going over the details of the dream so I wouldn't forget them afterward. Damn, I'm a spurg. I said, using the method of loci, which I highly recommend, because that's like relevant to the story I'm telling here. While going over it in my head, I felt chills over the back of my skull that reminded me of Owl's link to ASMR. So that was the night I left those comments. Mm-hmm. Then I remembered that Paul's admonition that Jesus hasn't given us a spirit of fear, which reminded me that, real or not, proper Christian response to powerlessness and big scary weirdness is precisely what I'd done, which is to wait faithfully, pray, and hope. Whereas being scared is offensive to our Savior, because it's like you're saying you don't belong to him. And I'll come back to that in a second. Kind of like how it is offensively silly to second guess a highly competent firefighter who's busily trying to save your life, except we're talking about orders of magnitude bigger than a public service professional. So then I wasn't scared anymore and actually went back to sleep. Like, no problems. All right, so we're done. There was a valuable spiritual lesson in all of this, and I gave thanks and praised Jesus, and then I got up and went about my day with a heightened sense of what is important. All told, it was an uplifting experience. And something I didn't mention in here, which is important, is I learned in a very concrete way a theological position taken by, I think, the entirety of the church, which is that a Christian can't be possessed. And what I sensed from this process was that the reason for that is that you have the Holy Spirit within you, and you can't have the two spirits existing in there at the same time. Mm-hmm. So I didn't really know or understand that before this, but I had a very concrete sense of it happening at the time. It's like, oh, she can't actually get in there because it's occupied. Mm-hmm. But that understanding didn't come until afterward, because I was like, how do I say? It felt like the impulse to meditate on the cross at that time was sort of an expression of that already existing reality, where it's just like, this is something that's already in there, so that's what comes into focus, and it's like nothing else can get in there. So, pretty clearly the house there is a metaphor for the body, but I honestly don't. So that the going through the monitor thing, that would be some sort of amateur. What do you call that when you project your astral projection?
Yeah.
I don't know what the kids would be in that case, because that's. Kids usually have something to do with innocence.
I don't wanna dumb elbow my way through this dream interpretation.
Yeah, go ahead.
Where it's like, yeah, the kids, your innocence, and you're worried that you're gonna lose all of your good feelings about the world, but then they happen to not. But then the black lady's trying to get into you. That's the black pill. You were on the verge of getting subconsciously black pilled and giving up hope, and then you realize that there is hope, and there's Jesus, and you got back your will to live. You almost died in your sleep that day.
Could be. I really fucking hate school. I was talking earlier how I go crazy when I'm in school, and this is one of those things that happened during a particularly bad one. It's gotten worse over the years. Mm-hmm. Where each semester, like I would get more and more, I'd get sick more and more often. Like I think my senior year, I got sick 20 times. Like I was really just never not sick during that one.
School ain't good. Homeschool or die.
Yeah. Or you'll have horrible, horrible dreams. All right, I'm gonna hit the bathroom now. You gotta do your thing.
Fun hitting the bathroom. I'll just tell a story about how I stabbed the dude in the eyeballs or whatever. He's going. Let me find it on the Discord. I had a dream as well. I had a dream that one day everybody will get like $1,000 in a thing. Yeah, I had a dream about I had a dream that I can't read the Discord without laughing because our secret chat room in the Discord that all the cool kids go to, is just so good, so hilarious. All the content in it is amazing. So, yeah, so I have a dream. And I'll tell this dream because we're in spooky, scary message time. So, a while back, this happened a while back, but a long time ago, and a few months ago, however long ago, I saw a video that was a compilation of like people snatching kids from behind parents' backs. It was like surveillance footage or CCTV camera footage of like some person paying at the store and then the kid just gets whoop and out the door. And a lot of that kind of stuff. And it didn't sit well with me. So in the dream, I was going to some security store to buy a flashlight or a baton or a gun or something. And there was a tall, bald, muscly guy at the front, and I think some lady and a thin old man. So there's like an old guy, a big guy, and some girl. And out in the front of the store, there was a sign that said, "Cops are giving out candy. Just stop here and open your back door." And there was like a speed bump kind of hump thing that you could park on the place. So my woman was with me in the car, and she said she saw the store people pull some kid out of a truck as we pulled in to park at the store. It's like, that's not good. That's happening. So I was like, "Are you sure? Okay, call the cops and I'll go in and check." So I go in and walk through the front room into a second room at the back. Sure enough, the old man has like a lady in a wheelchair. "Is this your kid?" She's not a kid. And I look, and it's this baby-sized grandma, and she is not happy at all. Okay, so she's not yours, huh? So I grab him by the throat and pin him against the wall and tell him we're waiting for the cops. I get woken up due to the woman coming home in real life. I go back asleep, and I continue the dream. So next, I'm in my house, which somehow has all glass walls, like it's a screened-in porch or something, but indoors. The big guy comes in my house while I'm sitting down, tosses a bowl with dollar signs on it or something, and asks, how much do you want?" So this was something like the guy knew that I knew. We had the episode, and I went back home, and he's trying to pay me off or something. And he says, "Hey, how much you want?" So I would say, I want $1 million, just as a fuck you, because I know he's not going to go for that. So he says, "That's nice. You want all the money we're facing trial for. I'm not going to do that." So at that moment, I realize he's coming in to silence me so I can't testify. So I poke him in the carotid with my finger, and I grapple him to the ground. So I'm like trying to choke this guy to death. I land near a bunch of tools and knives, so I get a screwdriver, and I start stabbing out the guy's eyes.
Holy shit, that's a weird place to come back in.
About this time, the old man comes around for backup, and in the dream, I was like, okay, this dude just logically has a gun. And he's in grabbing range of a knife. So I go, "Okay, man. Yeah, you got me." I'm sitting there stabbing out this dude's second eyeball because it's kind of hard in the dream to pop the eyeball. So I'm like, "Okay, dude, you got me. I'll stop now." And I finish that up. I jump up, grab the knife, and I was just about done stabbing him. And then I woke up, and I'm like, I'm not going back to sleep a second time, So I had to write the story down somewhere, and now I'm awake. Didn't wake up spooked, but that was not a pleasant dream, and if I just went back to sleep, I'd be back in it. So yeah, that was a story about how I stabbed some dream kidnapper's eyes out and almost went to his buddy accomplice guy. Because I think I just killed my fear of kids getting snatched from me or something in that dream. Okay. Basically. Like, I had some disturbing shit that bothered me, and then I went into the dream world, and I stabbed the fuck out of it with a screwdriver.
Right. You looked internally, found that fear.
Well,
you took care of business.
I think some of it is like you never really know. The idea is that you never really know how you're gonna react until you get into a situation.
Mm-hmm.
And I read a thing. Koenig linked a thing to LaFon talking about how that's bullshit because it means nobody can have emergency response scenarios at all. Like the logical end goal of nobody knows how you'll act in a crisis unless you're already there means you can't train people for emergency preparedness.
That's the thing. Have we ever talked about that on here? Is like the importance of training for like an emergency, like you're an EMT or something.
I don't think we've talked about that, but that segues next. That actually is we're going to have a word from our sponsors, and that's really relevant to that. So let me do this, and then you tell me about how important the training is, because the idea is if you hash it out beforehand and you have the samurai mindset, you're like, okay, I'm going to jump on the grenade, then it's easier because you're like, oh shit, what do I do? Oh yeah, and then you do the thing. So having the stuff beforehand lets you get through that. So I think what happened is I was encountering some weird shit, and so I had a dream about it and go, how would I react? How should I react in that situation, right? Do you just shrug your shoulders and go, oh wow, what a tragedy? Or do you get proactive about it? Or do you, if some Muslim taxi driver takes your kid home at night and then you have to go get him, what do, right? Do you call the cops? Do you go, do you tell people you're going to go to his house? Like, do you just shrug your shoulders and...
Based on what we know, no, you do not tell the cops.
Because you're in occupied territory? Right. So you figure that stuff out beforehand, and you keep an eye on the world to make sure that you don't get in those shitty situations to begin with. But I think what Dream Me said is that if that stuff happens, kill someone. I think that's the idea.
Yeah. Get down to business, get it done with. It's going to be unpleasant. Clearly is one of the messages of the dream, but...
Yeah.
But you get it done with. You got a job to do, and you get in there and do it. And then you don't tell nobody.
Mm-hmm. So it's like, I'm just a peaceful Neanderthal gamer that didn't do nothing, but also don't touch my tendies.
Yeah.
Because I got a joke about everything, especially the things I don't like.
Yeah. Were you gonna insert a bit of advertising from the sponsors? Is that editing?
Training is important. Tell me about this training that's important in a disaster scenario.
Oh, okay. So the deal is like your training takes over in an emergency, right? That's first of all, that's part of the reason that we do it.
Right.
Because sometimes your conscious brain checks out a little bit, and you might wake up from your reverie. You're out on your first call as an EMT, and you realize, my training actually took care of that situation, and I wasn't even thinking about it. I've just drilled it over and over so many times that it was easy. Now that's an extreme case, and that doesn't really happen with a lot of people. But if you find that if you're under some sort of extreme mental stress, then what you're going to find is that you're going to default to your habitual modes of behavior.
You fall back on your training.
Yeah. So let's say your habit, if something is happening that you don't like, is to fight it, right? If that is appropriate in some situations, not appropriate in others. But it's what you're going to do if you're stressed out. Like you're going to fall back on that.
Yeah.
That's part of being under stress is you just can't think about it. There's no willpower left to do anything about it differently. Yeah. So that's why you got to train yourself for particular scenarios. That's why you might not be able to count on yourself to tie your shoes like in the middle of a fight, but you could probably throw a decent punch if you've ever done it before. Like this is something that you know how to do instinctively, and you can train yourself to Do better, close your fingers properly so you don't break nothing.
Yeah. Or even in less of a super scary situation, if somebody's just somebody looks like they're falling down, they're clutching their chest, and you're like, oh, he looks like he's having a heart attack. What do I do? What do I do? Somebody should call the police, or somebody should call the ambulance or something.
Yeah. So basic first responder training.
Yeah. If you've trained before, you can say, you call 911. You go get the defibrillator. You get on that guy and help me with the chest compressions. And then people will be like doing this number with the deer in the headlights. They'll do it because you told them to.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's a thing that happens a lot of times too. Is if you tell one person to do a thing during an emergency situation, they'll be like, "Okay, I'll do that."
Yeah, especially if you seem like you've got some sort of authority to you. It's like, okay, this guy knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
And maybe you don't, but maybe hopefully you do. If you train properly.
There are a lot of dangerous situations like that people aren't really prepared for. Like, you could get hit with a pipe bomb at the Boston Marathon and have your legs cut off. And somebody's hemorrhaging and bleeding out, and then the people that are left going, what's going on, and panicking. If only there was a way to do something in those scenarios.
If only you had some sort of device on you.
If you had some sort of training and the tools to take care of these terrible situations, people would probably look at you and think you're a well put together, very handsome man, just from having this ability. Like, it gives you that glow of confidence that you're ready to deal with that scenario. So, actually, now that you mention it, we do have a thing like that. It's Lizard King's tourniquet guy, and he's got something to say about that will probably be right about here, wherever here is.
Radio magic.
I don't have timestamps. Ooh, spooky advertisements. Okay. So that should be enough that I can skip through here and grab it because I don't have timestamps right now. But note to self. Woo, spooky advertisement. And that's going to go in eventually. While I'm doing that, while I'm thinking about woo, spooky advertisement, this kind of breaks the flow of it, but I'm sure I can just insert it. I can do the advertisement first, and then all this talk about I'm definitely getting around to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I'll do it afterwards, just to spook you.
I'll be spooked when I see you do some audio editing. Like something supernatural is afoot.
Yeah, that's the hallmark of the show. It's we don't cut anything out, even when we probably should. That's my motto. My motto is, that's too much work.
The autistic guy peeing with the door open.
Yeah. Wait, what?
That never happened.
Oh. I thought you said paying with the door open, and then you said peeing with the door open, and it all... I saw all the numbers flash in front of me. I had the genius moment. I was like, that's what he meant. It all comes together now. All the clues, they all point. Like true north, like a compass that only points true north. All the evidence is just zowing into a single direction.
You're like the reincarnation of Alan Turing. You broke the code.
Yeah.
The Nazis never had a chance.
They never had a chance. Yeah, those butthole flag guys. Led by a vegan. What douches. What knob gobblers.
Alright, so...
And their outfits are trash. Nobody would wear that. I've seen better outfits at a pride parade, and they don't even wear them out there. Okay, I gotta get off of that. I'm gonna get in some real trouble here if I start. I turn on the making fun of things too high. It's getting spooky in a Halloween episode.
Gotta turn the knob down on that.
Turn the knob down. Ooh. That's about a good volume right there. Ooh. Spooky, scary. There we go. I turned the knob down. Physically, with my hands. The knob isn't physical, but my hands are. That's all you need, really.
What do we talk about? Is there more spooky stuff to do? Do you just want to shit post for another half hour?
Well, we're in costume as offensive people when we're really just nice guys that believe everything you believe, dear listener. And that was a fun time. We gave out trick or treats. We got tricks. We got treats. We got spooky stories. We got campfire stories. You guys had to bring your own marshmallows, so you can't blame us for that. I think we're pretty good. That was a good thing. Do you have anything else you want to talk about for this episode of the Spooky Scary Podcast with no name? Our name was stolen by goblins.
It would be cool to do the Ziggurat Dweller one that Koanik put up all those years ago, but that is really long, so probably not.
Yeah. Like I'm saying, we could do that. I think that one was actually longer than the BANEPOST one.
Yeah.
Because it had so many different quotes to it.
Mothman.
So it'd have to be the next time. It'd have to be the Spooky Thanksgiving episode of that one. The early Thanksgiving, late Halloween, spooktacular turkey special? Question mark?
The ghosts of all those turkeys sacrificed by America. It's like the Indian burial grounds, but for turkeys.
The Indian burial grounds, but for turkeys. Oh, man. How would that work? Maybe turkeys are too dumb to haunt people. Maybe they're too smart to haunt people. Maybe they're like, what are you saying? I'm going to have to spend 3,000 years of the afterlife as some kind of revenant haunting people that go around my patch of grass? Nah, fuck that noise. I'm going to turkey heaven.
All right. Here's a picture for you. 500 years from now, in a bombed out landscape. It's a just horrible place. America has been nuked all to hell. The world is over.
Oh no.
The hydraulic door of a vault opens, and out comes the turkeys.
The turkeys?
The real master race this whole time. They were the smart ones. They knew not to pick a fight. They were just waiting everybody else out.
Those dodos didn't even build their own vault. Yeah, you said it. Turkey high five. That's why they're extinct.
That was a good pun. That was nice.
Yeah. I'll pat myself on the back for that one. While also saying, don't try this at home. If you ever do a pun, you should feel ashamed. They're horrible. They have no place in comedy.
They'll be illegal in the ethno state.
Yeah. They're like the transsexuals of comedy.
No puns, no smartphones, no
I'm
young.
covering all my bases now.
No young people.
No young people. You gotta be out of the womb at least about 35. If you're not out of your teens by the time you're out of your womb, you're out of our ethno state. Basically. 3 outs and you're out.
I want to call it. I feel like
that sounds good.
All right.
I think we've achieved everything we set out to achieve. My Spooky Lizard King advertisement should be coming in the mail anytime soon, so this will be out when it comes out, which is on the usual schedule, like Wednesday or Thursday, or Friday or Saturday, and yeah, that'll work. You wanna talk stuff a little bit after this thing?
Yeah.
All right. Signing off, everybody. Sayonara. Remember, we were just in costume as offensive people. We believe everything you believe, and we love you.
Very much.
Have a spooky Halloween. Goodbye.